So Martin, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. It's you've been one of those guests that I've been trying to like kind of I guess back into a corner and get on the show for a while. I feel like you've been pulled in many different directions in the last like
That's
12
right.
months.
Well, you've managed it. I'm here.
Finally. This goes all the way back to uh Britain's Got Talent and stuff like that as well. I'd been kind
Oh,
of
wow.
putting it out there in the ether, but you're a wanted man these days.
Yeah. A bit sought after, which is crazy, but nice. I'm not knocking it. It's wonderful.
Just fresh back off a trip to LA.
Yeah.
We were just chatting a second ago about that, and I guess now being back, you're back in the UK now, right?
Yeah, I'm back home, back in the UK. Sorry about the background. This is actually
So
my
how
house.
does that feel now though to have gone through? I do want to touch on that maybe a bit more in a few moments, but I guess that feeling of coming back, because it's not necessarily, I guess, a holiday you were on.
No,
It's kind of
no,
work. So
it was really surreal. I mean, obviously, with the release of Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, the we're actually having the premiere for this film in 2 days' time down in London. So it's January 29th. But they wanted to release the film in the US like earlier. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So we flew out to LA. We went to AMC. We did Q&As. We saw the first showings there. Then we went over to Universal City Walks. We were actually at Universal Studios, which was mind-blowing. And I'm there signing and doing different things, stood right next to the costumes from Wicked, like the original costumes behind glass. And I'm just like, what is this? What is happening to me right now? And it was quite surreal, but it was wonderful. And that was a one hell of an experience. Yes, and it was great to go to Hollywood for business straight off. I've never been there. So instead of just leisure, mind-boggling. So many emotions, but it was wonderful.
it's I'm probably going to end up jumping around a little bit here with like some of the questions, but I guess if we go back to the start for a second, when did the idea of acting and being involved in film and TV become something that you became more serious about? Like, was it something as a kid you were like, oh, this is the thing I want to
Yeah,
do, or did it come later in life?
yeah. So, I mean, I always, I think it comes down to my parents. My parents were very hard working. My mother worked in care. She worked with a lot of disabled children. Very hard working. Had two jobs while I was growing up. So we were like a full-on working class family. And by the time I reached a certain level of maturity, my father was like, you need to go out, you need to get yourself this job. I was like, right, okay, I do need to do something with my life. But I was very big on art and design, and I always loved movies. I mean, we grew up on television and great old movies like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones and the Naked Gun trilogies and Gremlins and The Evil Dead, and all that. That era was just, it just creatively mind-boggling, and because that's what I grew up with, I grew up to love those kind of genres. And I really always had this kind of internal want to do that as a profession. But my dad's like, my man, you need to get off your ass and get a job. So I got a job at the local hospital. I started off as an orderly, then I worked in a sterile service, and then I actually went to university and I qualified to be a healthcare professional. So I ended up working in as a healthcare professional in anaesthetics, surgery, and recovery in an orthopedic theatre. Which is really crazy because it's completely not what I wanted to do ever. But it was a career, and I felt good about myself, and it got to the point where I was like, "This is my life now." I'm getting up 9-5, coming home, and it was making me miserable.
Mm.
And this was about 15, 20 years ago now, and I just made a change. That was it. I just thought, you know what? You only live once, right? You only live once. I dropped everything. I just literally cut everything out, and I focused on being creative. I connected with creatives in my area. I get a lot of questions, quite similar actually, and more about how do I get into acting, Martin? You know, or can you give me some advice and all this kind of stuff? And I always go back to do what makes you happy, apply yourself, don't give up, work hard, connect with people in your local area that are doing the same, and just say yes. Like, don't be afraid, you know, just say yes. And that's what I did. I just kept saying yes. So I'm working hard.
It's funny because from the more people I talk to, it seems to be a similar trend in the sense of, I think sometimes people get a little bit confused and they may like look at your story or see you now and it seems like this overnight success, and it's like, oh, I want to be that guy, I want to be in LA and I want to be at signings in Universal,
Yeah.
I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's like, do you actually, is that something that you have the passion for, that you're willing to drop like a quote unquote good career to chase that dream? Or is it just because you've seen the Instagram version of this person's life and it's like, oh, I want that?
Yeah, exactly. I you know, for me though, you can get yourself tied up in looking at other people's profiles and looking at what they're doing. You know, there's a lot of the big Hollywood celebrities that, you know, and people say, oh, it's the dream, it's the dream. But I've come to learn in this, you know, in this industry, that it's not necessarily all about getting and achieving that dream. It doesn't just click and happen overnight. Like, you know, not unless something stupid happens and, you know, you land a role in something absolutely massive and you're a nobody to start with and suddenly you're somebody. It's all about working hard. Most people have worked very hard to get to where they are. And I'm no different. I've done the same.
I think it's something that about your story and about everything that's a little bit underplayed, that like I think a lot of people think, I'm sure you can remember back to Britain's Got Talent and like the idea of the witch and stuff, and it was like this thing everyone was trying to figure out, like, who is the witch, who's that, what's going on, and then eventually like it kind of comes out that you had played that character, and I think people assumed like, oh, it's like this breakout, like first thing you've ever done just appeared, and it's like, I think it's very underplayed how long you've been working and like grafting at this. It's not just, and it's something I always reiterate. Like I myself also have no clue about what it takes or how difficult it is, but I think the audience always ask me to ask questions like that, and I think it's really underplayed how, for most people who get anywhere, get a chance to, I guess, live out their dream, it doesn't happen. You don't get that.
I got given a piece of advice, which stuck with me, and I've always used it. In fact, I actually posted it up on my Instagram today in the little note thing. It's not that it's impossible. It's not that you can't do it. It's just unfamiliar. So, you know, when you get a job, or someone says, do you think you could do this? And you're like, oh God, I don't know if I could do this. Because I had exactly the same thing on Britain's Got Talent. Someone contacted me and they said, you know, can you do this? And suddenly I had this kind of like, oh, the one thing that I've always wanted to do. And now I'm trying to say no to myself. Like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can stand up in front of those 4 judges and, you know, 2,500 people in the theatre and be live on national television on my own doing magic, being this character. Like, from doing not a lot to suddenly this one thing was so daunting. And I started to have, like, you know, mini panic attacks. And I was thinking, I remembered this lesson and I thought, it's not that I can't do it, it's just it's unfamiliar. So the more work I put into it and the more study and the more characterization I did and the more reading the scripts and the more learning the magic, it suddenly became more and more and more familiar. And I thought, well, I'm actually very capable of doing this. And I think everybody needs to remember that it's not that you can't, it's just unfamiliar.
So you would say then, in that situation, because I've definitely, to a way lesser degree, I've definitely been chasing after a dream or a goal, and then there's been these little glimpses of like maybe an olive branch being extended, and like I'm looking for every reason, every excuse to be like, well, normally I would say yes, but see this thing happen, and now right now I can't, but some other time if you like circle back around to me, not realizing that I could be potentially giving away that one chance to like change everything.
Yeah.
Do you think that
Always
comes
say
from,
yes.
Yeah.
No, always say yes, because what's the worst thing that can happen? It doesn't work out, but at least you tried.
Mm.
And then you'd be kicking yourself otherwise, like a year down the line. You go, I should have done it. Should have tried it because you know, always just go for it
And
and have
so,
faith in yourself.
so to go from that, then, actually, so how did that whole Britain's Got Talent thing come about from your point of view? So you got contacted after the concept had
So
already been kind of fleshed out.
I did, yeah. So basically, I worked on a wonderful little film called Wolf Manor. I think it's known as Scream of the Wolf in the US. And the director on that, Dominic Brunt, who was Paddy from Emmerdale, I think, and
Yep.
he was wonderful. And the prosthetic team that were there, the prosthetic studio with Sean Harrison and Paul Ram Booker, they um, they had to cast my entire head for this movie because I get my head chopped off in the film, which is quite surreal. Um, and they were talking while we were having all this done, while I was having this done, and we were talking about other things they'd done. And they said, well, we've actually, looking for someone to come on to Britain's Got Talent because we had a witch, but the person who did the original witch can't do it anymore for XYZ reasons. Would you be interested? Because you've got quite a unique feature. And I was like, you mean I've got a big nose? And they're like, well, yeah. Anyway, so that's how it kind of came about. So then they forwarded my details to some of the producers at Britain's Got Talent, and it just went from there. And I find that a lot of jobs end up coming about from other jobs and people that you meet. Like, it's not just you sit at home and wait for the phone to call. Like, you have to network and you have to keep proactive and work with people you want to work with, and a connection will continuously, one day you'll get a phone call, but it'll be from someone you've worked with before, or that someone you've worked with before will put your name forward for a role, like
Mm.
what happened on Peter Pan. They couldn't find Peter Pan, but the makeup artist I'd worked on another production with recommended me to the director, so he gave me a call.
That's wild. And now to think that like you're like the face of that movie.
I know, it's crazy. It's a horrible face as well, isn't it?
It's such a wild like to think that, and I guess it goes back to what you've just said about like had you have said no or tried to shy away in any of those circumstances previous,
Yeah, then I
that,
wouldn't be here right now. Yeah.
it's wild when I think about that. So the producers on Britain's Got Talent were up for it, and you get given the go ahead or whatever, and like you said, you start to get that panicky feeling. You're like, oh god. And to go from that point then to, I guess, when you walk off stage and you realize maybe a day or two later the reception for this was just absolutely astronomical. Like I remember at
Yeah,
that point I
yeah.
couldn't turn like anything on the phone, and it was like this was showing up, and it was all anybody was talking about. My 80-year-old granny was like, oh, I was watching Britain's Got Talent, there was this freaky witch, I don't know, like everybody's talking about it. And I'm like, what was that like to go from like nerves to like, wow, this is like really like hitting something with people?
I was really proud of myself. I made myself. It was a great achievement for me personally. I broke a lot of barriers within myself to do that. But yeah, it was a bit weird, like seeing it, waking up and then going to the shop. I mean, I go to my local Tesco's in the morning after I drop my lad off at school, and I go and get myself a nice coffee. And then I'm just there looking at the newspapers, looking at the tabloids, and it's like my picture on the front page with Amanda Holden chasing her off the stage with a rat. And I was just like, okay, okay, this is, it's crazy, but I like it. It was good. But I mean, no one knew it was me. So it was
Yeah.
all right. Like, it wasn't, we didn't have people coming up to you going, "Oh my god, it's you the witch." And I was like, no, because no one knew, and it was cool. I kind of, thankful really that no one knew early on.
And I guess, was there any point then where you were like, and I don't mean this, if this comes across wrong, it's not what I mean, but in the sense of like, obviously nobody knows it's you, and like everybody's talking about how you're playing this character. Was there ever a point where you were like, well, I kind of maybe want people to know this is me? Because
Yeah, okay, yeah. So professionally, I was allowed to put the credit on my resume, for example, my CV and my lovely lists of work I've done. But you wouldn't necessarily be allowed to just advertise that you were this witch, and unless people know who you are and they can find you and then go, oh, this guy played this character, let's have a look at his resume. It doesn't work the other way around. You know, like it was a job, it was a career advertisement for me that I never got the opportunity to kind of show. That's the most disappointing thing about it early on.
And I guess all that happens, and I feel like that character especially, and I think even from like maybe the magic and the stunts aside, I think it was how you played the role was resonating with the audience more than anything. And I'm sure you've been asked that question a million times about would we ever see that character in a movie, or is there ever going to be any more done with that character? Blah blah blah.
That character was a very specific character, and you know, I don't actually own the rights to that act. So, I mean, I never say never. You know, I would go back and do it again on a live stage show. In fact, they did ask me to go back and do a show in Italy with it, and the company basically said yes. So I went and did that in Rome, and there was I think in terms of a movie, that I'm actually in the process of we're creating, writing and pre-production a film called Cauldron, which is based on witches, obviously. And although the actual character from BGT will probably not show its face in there, there will be very similar characters, which are, you know, and I'm probably going to be paying one of the parts in there as well. So, you know, it's there will be other things created in influence from those performances.
So anybody who loves that then can have that to look forward to.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Has, I guess I don't want to, like, it's probably a broad stroke to say it's just solely horror, but have those dark roles and the kind of I don't know, the freakier side of characters always appealed to you, or is it just something that's happened through circumstance?
Both, mainly through circumstance, but they have appealed to me because they are so out there and they are so different, and not everybody gets to play those kind of roles, you know. I mean, like, Peter Pan, for example, is a complete psycho. He's not a very nice man at all. He's got a lot of issues, a lot of history. To dive deep into that kind of psychological mindset to help build that character was very, it was very intriguing. It was very interesting, and it was great to experiment with that. And I really enjoyed that.
Moving on to that then, because I've heard nothing but good things about this movie so far, and I feel like, because I know it's based on an existing IP or whatever you want to call it, but I feel like, in my opinion, as somebody who I would class myself as somewhat of a horror connoisseur, it feels like an original work, even though we're using the kind of, you know,
Yeah,
and Neverland Nightmare. But the reception has been like really good, which, and I don't
it
mean that
has.
from a bad way. I mean, I'm so used to now every time something comes out, like, your average audience just goes, oh, garbage, next, what's on tomorrow, what's on the next day. There's
Yeah.
50 other movies came out, and you know, movies kind of, even if they're good, just tend to get just pushed aside and it's just whatever. But this seems to kind of be, I don't know, resonating with an audience.
Yeah, so one of the first pieces of really good news that we had from it was a top critic from Variety gave it his blessing, and we were like, "Wait, what? You're giving it, like, you know?" And he says, "Yeah, it's good." Like, so in terms of the actual movie, we had extended days for the cinema release in the US. The cinemas turned around and said, "We're going to extend this," which was just like, wow, that's brilliant. And, you know, I think a lot of people have gone into this with the understanding they're not going to be looking at a Disney Peter Pan horror flick. You know, this is nothing to do with any other way that this story has kind of been portrayed. You know, the J.M. Barrie's original writings. I mean, it's a dark play. Hang on, let me show you something. So I've got here a book of J.M. Barrie's original Peter Pan, and within its pages, let's have a look. There are clear moments within this book which shows how Peter Pan is off the chain. Like, he is a psycho. Like, I'm not going to. I was going to read a passage, but I won't read a passage. Basically, you've got a little boy who flies to children's windows, and takes them off to a land without the adults' permission, where he teaches them to live free and do what they want without any kind of remorse. They'll kill pirates. There's no consequences. These are kids living without consequences, right? They're bad boys, you know. And Hook, of all people, you've got these adult characters that are like these effing kids are causing problems and killing my boys. Like, what can we do? You know, no wonder Hook wasn't, you know, angry with them. If you think about that kind of setup, that's exactly what Scott Chambers did. That's exactly what Scott did. He flipped it on its head. So you've got a lot of people who you originally perceived to be the good guys and now the bad guys, etc. And I think he's managed to do it out of a fairy tale world and put it into a reality situation. So if Peter Pan was really an adult in this world, what would he be doing? And how would these characters be in a real world? And as a result, is Neverland actually real? You know, he's saying it is, you know, blah, blah, blah. But is it actually a real place, or is it all in there for him? And I love how the movie kind of touches on that. And we've had nothing but great reviews about the characters and the story.
And I think people were even shocked when they seen some of the images from the movie. I think, like what you alluded to, the initial perception would have been, okay, we're getting like a horror version of like a Disney Peter Pan thing. And then when you see some of the images, you're like, wow, that's not what I expected. That looks like it's in reality, and that looks pretty graphic and scary. That's not what I expected.
I think there was a handful of people, I think, that were really disappointed, going, oh my God, what the hell is this? I mean, that's not Peter Pan. But that's because they're comparing it, you know. And they could say, you know, oh, I think it's destroyed our childhood and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, if you're thinking it's destroying your childhood, firstly, don't watch it. And secondly, it is an adaptation of a story, which is exactly what Disney did. You know, they took this and turned it into what we perceive Peter Pan to be. And that's no different to what Scott's done. He's taken this and he's twisted it into a story.
How do you feel about and I know this is not all specifically done through Scott or yourself or the same companies, but the idea now of this thing, you know, we've had Winnie the Pooh, I see Piglet, Popeye, Bambi, there's like all these different characters seem to be getting these horror reboots and stuff. How do you feel about that in general? Because I feel like there's definitely, I'd say when it's all said and done, we're going to, like, obviously the cream will always rise to the top. So I think you're going to see movies like this will probably be here, and then people will try and replicate.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think there's a story to be done. I'm a big believer that every story has been told. It just depends that, you know, if you were going to create a movie, then that story needs to be told the way you want to tell it. And all these characters are so vibrant, and, you know, it's great that somebody's taking the advantage of, you know, taking the foundation of these characters and then adding something new to it. It creates new content. It makes it more interesting, and some of them might be more popular than others. Some stories might be more popular than others, but I mean, I'm looking forward to this Pooniverse thing. I think every film that this twisted childhood universe that they're creating that comes out, that they're all very, very different. I mean, I worked on the set of Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a incredibly different film to the Peter Pan movie. It's shot differently. It's quirkier. The dialogue is is very different. It's more humble and relaxed. It's quirky. It's funny. It's disgusting. Peter Pan isn't that. Peter Pan's disturbing. So all these different movies, as you say, some may rise to the top and some might kind of fall. People aren't fans, but one thing that is important is that they're all going to be coming together for this Avengers style kind of film, where all the horror characters kind of come together to fight, and all the horror heroes are coming together to fight, and they're going to be teaming up with unlikely people, which is, and I'm really interested to see how these different styles of these characters from these very different movies are actually going to be interacting in the same movie. So I'm interested.
And I personally think a lot of the naysayers, maybe when some of this stuff was announced, are probably eating their words a little bit now, and like maybe some of them are looking at like how well some of this stuff has been received and like how well it's performing, and it's like, oh, so if you're actually like passionate about this and you want to make something unique and different, it doesn't have to be garbage. It can actually be good.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of this stigma left around with people trying to make like cheap, rundown horrors out of characters that we already know. But I've been very fortunate to work with a bunch of filmmakers that take it very seriously. It's about the story, it's about narrative, it's about the characters, and that kind of stuff elevates the film. And I think people, as you say, they'll recognize that when they watch it and go, actually, it's actually quite good.
I don't know if you know like the logistics of this or whatever, but where will this movie live over here? Like, I'm in Ireland, you're in the UK at the minute. You mentioned the premiere in a couple of days' time. Like, are we going to see like a limited theatrical release in the UK and Ireland or in Europe, or like how is that going to work?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not 100% versed on exactly what's happening, but I can tell you that the premiere is this Wednesday, actually, down in London. There will be in around February time, I think it's to be confirmed, a cinematic release here in the UK and Ireland. I think it's going over to Portugal. I think it's going over to Spain. I have a funny feeling it's going to go to Mexico, Europe. I think there are going to be cinemas across board, but I'd say keep an eye out on the social media pages of the people producing, because they will obviously release announcements and stuff. And so if you want to go to the cinema and see it, then there will be lists of areas and which companies are releasing it for cinematic release.
It's funny you mentioned some other territories there, and I think a lot of people, whether you're stateside or you're in Europe somewhere, you always kind of just, those are always seen as like the two markets. It's like, okay, North America and then like Europe, and that's probably about it. Like with the UK maybe at the highest on the other side of the world. And I was listening to this, like, doesn't really have much of a connection, but I was listening to Quentin Tarantino talk about casting roles for Pulp Fiction. When they talked about having Bruce Willis in the movie, and obviously they wanted him because his name and things like that. And he was talking about the concept of like, at the time Bruce Willis was a star in the States, but he's like, I went to Korea and we went to Japan and stuff with him, and like he was a million times more famous over there than he was in the States at the time. The action movies and stuff at the time were just huge there. And I think this happens a lot with horror. It goes to other markets and we never realize that movies become massively popular in other markets.
Yeah. I think Germany's one of them. I've heard that Germany have a massive kind of horror base, like really big. Yeah, I think there's a lot of horror actors that end up doing conventions over there.
Yeah, that's another thing. And it's probably one of the few, I would say, where you get horror actors, they get these roles, and like they can kind of, it's nice to see when they get older and maybe the roles slow down, that they can continue to have some sort of like source of income, and quite well. I hear some of them do, literally just from the fans constantly wanting to meet them and ask questions or get stuff signed, which is kind of nice to see.
Yeah. No, it's very, very handy. I think for anyone's career, it's always something nice to I don't think I want to go there yet. Like
Yeah.
I've got a lot of career to go, but if I ever decide to kind of wind down my work and stuff, then at least I can go and have the privilege of seeing the people that helped my career by encouraging the views, and yeah, it'd be great.
How did it feel when you finally got the costume on, you had the makeup and everything done, and you saw yourself for the first time as this character?
I said hello to myself. How crazy is that? I actually looked in the mirror. I closed my eyes because he said it's done, and said looked in the mirror, opened my eyes, and it was just this completely different person looking back at me. And I said, "Oh, hello." Yeah.
Yeah, wild.
And yeah, it was the makeup was very, very it was very comfortable, and the prosthetic team were great, and it felt like it was part of me. Like it was temperature sensitive, so if I had cold hands and I touched my face, I could feel my cold hands through the silicone. So I kind of used that. It got to me a little bit over time because I'd walk around all day, every day, looking disgusting, doing these horrible acts, and being this horrendous character for most of the day, and it really kind of got to me. And this thing here, this this is the original one. This helped me quite a lot because I put this on, and it kind of hide all of my scarring.
Yeah.
And I kind of preferred that when I was talking to people. So the scenes where I was wearing the mask was a lot easier for me mentally, which is crazy.
All the collectors are going to be screaming at the screen right now, wanting to know how they can get that from you.
How do you want to know how? Right, so this was hand sculpted by the prosthetic studio, and there was a few of them made. But this one was the main one. It's got a lot more detail. It is like a fiberglass, from fiberglass mold. So you won't really be able to make one exactly the same or buy one exactly the same. Not unless the studio decide to make a load of very simple copies, and we could sell them potentially. I don't know about the rights to that. But this is the original one. This is the one I wore in the screen. There's a few cracks. It got thrown around a bit. Seen better days.
It's crazy how like even already the movie hasn't like officially come out in all markets, and like the minute you showed that on screen, instantly I have a smile on my face. And I'm like, oh, there's like I can already tell it's like, at least for horror, it feels like a piece of like history already.
Yeah, no, I like to keep a little something from everything I've done.
Yeah, I think people will probably in years to come. You'll still get hounded about.
I've got this that I brought back from LA. So this is a movie poster, and it's signed by the director or the cast and crew. I've got a few more signatures actually to add to it, but I'm going to be framing that and keeping that. But if you come to conventions and stuff, I think I'm going to be doing a couple. So we'll, anyone who wants something like that, come down and we'll get them signed for you.
So now that I don't want to say now that the dust has settled really, because I feel like it's only kind of ramping up for this movie, but is it something that I know, like, obviously if there's been any talks you won't be able to say one way or the other, but I guess number one, is it a character you would like to revisit? Number two, has there been any suggestion about that? I feel like since this big boom of all these characters, and well, at least from an audience point of view anyway, the hunger is there for more and more and more.
Yeah. Peter Pan is, as I say, it was a very, very difficult character. It was a very challenging character for myself, because he's the complete opposite to what I actually am. I mean, I'm a father of three, but I would revisit the character because I find him so interesting, and he is going to be coming back for the Monsters Assemble movie that they're making from the Twisted Childhood universe. He's coming back with several other characters, and they're going to be introducing a couple of new characters as well. I don't know if I'm allowed to say who they are.
Yeah.
But I think he has already said. So Mary Poppins is going to be one of them. I think that he's going to be quite friendly with.
That's going to be wild.
Yeah, I think as a It kind of actually works if you think about it. You've got Mary Poppins and children, and you've got Peter Pan and children. So there's this kind of, yeah, I think there's going to be something going on there. But yeah, man, I'm excited for it.
Is again, I don't know how much it is because all this stuff gets floated online and you see all different timelines and rumors and stuff, but that is definitely a goal that we're going to get this like huge Pooniverse, whatever you want to call it, where everything is going to come together.
Yeah, it's been confirmed. Yeah,
it's crazy. Was there anything actually when you first took the role for the character? Was there anything that you know, either the director or anybody involved kind of gave you as a guideline for what they were looking at? Did they give you, I don't know, specific movies to look at or anything to kind of get you in the frame of mind?
So Scott, I didn't want to. Scott wanted something real, and I said, right, well, if you want it to be real, then I need to play this character truthfully to how I would perceive this. So I had to do a lot of research into the psychology of this character, and looked at cases of people that had done these kind of things horrendously in the past. Not in depth, but enough to give me that kind of understanding of how these guys think. So when I did the audition, I played it as true as I possibly could. And I was very fortunate. Scott really liked it. You know, you weren't trying to play evil. You know, I wasn't trying to be evil. I was just trying to be natural in the dialogue, and you know, believe it myself. And then that comes across, and he really liked that. He said, and then there was this moment where I thought, well, maybe I should watch a few other characters from horror films, and I kind of slapped myself and says, no, you should not watch any other horror films. He mentioned to me that there was a film called The Black Phone, that he said, I want you to watch this film, not generally for the character, but this is going to be the kind of feel for this movie. Like the energy you get from it, and the kind of pacing and all this kind of stuff. I was like, oh, right, okay. So I watched it for that, and it kind of really made sense. And I think we pulled that off as well. It was really good. Yeah, I got a lot of comments for like the opening scene where I'm underneath that trapdoor in the living room where this kid is falling asleep. And I get a lot of comments saying, you know, oh, he's very Pennywise, isn't he? Oh, he looks like the Crow. Or there's a bit Joker going on there. And that was really never my intention. It wasn't like something that I was striving for. It was more of, I just wanted to be truthful in that moment for what the character was doing. And, you know, I mean, I'll take the compliments, because to me, they're great compliments, you know. But that was never really the intention. We weren't trying to reproduce that. It was just something that just happened.
Speaking of that, is there a character, an existing character, that you would love to play from like the horror genre? Is there any, I don't know, like a Freddy or a whoever that you would absolutely be like, that would be my dream?
I like my quirky characters, man. I like quirky characters. So I've always been a big fan of Bruce Campbell. And I'm never going to be able to pull off Bruce Campbell. But yeah, to play some kind of Ash character in an Evil Dead, that would be amazing. I would love that. I would love that.
And go back to its roots, kind of like not as serious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
How about
Do you have any
champagne, baby?
There you go.
No, it's just that kind of, like, I love that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's been lost a little bit. I get what they're going for. They're trying to like make it more serious, the last two movies or whatever, and they've been good and they've done quite well. But I think people are still starving to kind of take that turn back to what a lot of people remember Evil Dead as.
Practical effects as well.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love those movies is that even though they green screened quite a lot of stuff in the last two films, but everything was physically made.
Yeah,
you know, there's no CGI in that because it didn't exist back then, and I loved the stop motion and the physical props, and everything was physical in there in front of you. I love that.
Do you have any favorite horror movies or things that like come to mind as standouts? I don't want to say a favorite movie, but is there any movies that just off the top of your head are like,
See,
oh, yeah,
I love movies that kind of keep you in a bit of suspense, and not necessarily horror, but really more thrillers. So
Yeah.
one that popped off the top of my head then was What Lies Beneath with Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. I think the filmmakers in that really kind of nailed this. They kept you glued to it. You didn't know what was going on, and it was freaky, and I like that kind of thing. But if we're going into like traditional horror and stuff like that, I mean, doesn't I don't know if it really fits into the context of horror. Maybe it used to, but Gremlins, the original Gremlins, when it
Yeah.
first came out, was scary. Chucky, I love the concept of Chucky. Like, I think it's brilliant. I got to work with Todd Masters like a few weeks back, which was insane. His puppeteer crew for Pinocchio. So they got me to. There's a little Easter egg for you. So the guy who played Peter Pan was actually doing the face movements for Pinocchio.
Which is wild.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's such a that was another one I forgot about was Pinocchio Unstrung. There's another movie that I think people are probably, like you said, it's a different style.
Yeah.
But I feel like just the reception online so far from some of the little teasers and artwork and stuff, people are really digging the idea of bringing these characters back in a different format. If you
Yeah.
could face off against any horror villain as Peter Pan or as another character, as the Witch or whoever, is there one that you'd like to face off with in a movie?
Like existing horror characters.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I actually haven't thought about it. I think it would be good to go up against a horror child. So
Mm.
probably maybe some horror children, with the Neverland element as well. I think maybe the child from The Ring,
There's actually a really good
the
concept.
girl from The Ring. Like, I think if it was Peter Pan, I'm
Yeah.
thinking Peter Pan terms,
Yeah.
then you've got a child that's in another world who's coming into our world, and you've got Peter Pan who's probably from another world who's coming into our world. That might be quite interesting.
There you go now. Somebody bookmark that.
Yeah.
So I guess looking forward then, like everyone's talking about this movie now and some of the stuff that's like bubbling under the surface, whatever. But for you personally, what would you like the future to look like? Where do you want to? Sometimes people get weirded out when I say things like legacy and stuff like that, but I feel like there's definitely a degree of that, I suppose, behind people, because this stuff is, in my opinion, this is forever. Long after
I'll be completely honest. I just want to work. I'm a father of three. I got a
Yeah.
family. I want to pay my bills, but I want to create. I want to create new and interesting things that will last forever, that people can enjoy, and make people happy with my work. That's it. That's the dream. That is the dream.
Is that a difficult balance to, like you said, you're a father of three, and you've got all those plates to juggle, which a lot of people struggle with in general, and then you've got I guess, to a lot of people, an unconventional career. In the sense of, like, you don't know what role is going to be next, you don't know where it's going to take you. You could be here, you could be there. I don't know what the kind of, like, what way the salaries are going to work. Does it make it more difficult to make decisions when you've got that in the back of your mind about, shit, I can't really just drop everything and run for this role for like no money? Then also I kind of want to do it creatively, and I'm like,
yeah, it gets to the stage. So, to touch on what I was talking about earlier and just saying yes to things, in your earlier part of your career, that's a very good idea. When it starts getting later and the reality starts kicking in and people are starting to respect you as a filmmaker or an actor, then you need to start being a little bit more select with what you do. It's got to be worth your time. It's got to be worth your effort. And you can't, you would not be able to take a job and go away for a month and then, not bring much money home.
yeah,
For example, when I went to film Peter Pan, I said goodbye to my kids in the car as I was being dropped off at a train station, and my little daughter, who's now 1, she was only just starting to stand up on her feet, only just, and by the time I got home, she was running around the house.
like that
So
trade.
yeah, so within that month, and you miss very important things. So unless the pay is good enough, or it's worth it for the career and your happiness, then you've just got to be very select. You've got to be very select, I find.
Mm. Is there, and again, like I said, I don't know how the inner logistics work and like behind the scenes, but is there an anxiety that you always carry with you in a career like this, where it's like, okay, because, and I've heard this time and time again about like, you're the best thing since sliced bread this month, and then next month it's like, oh yeah, it was just some guy who played in that movie, and then you might have another role, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, he's the guy again, he's the man.
Yeah, but I think that's more of a public kind of view. Like if you're in
Okay.
the industry and you're working, and like, say I worked on one movie and it wasn't very good. My performance was good, but the movie wasn't very good. Then whenever somebody who's wanting to hire you will look at your show reel or look at your performance, and they'll go, okay, that was all right. So it doesn't matter whether the movie was a flop or not. But if as long as what you were doing was good, then you're always going to kind of be okay. I think, as I say, I think you just got to be selecting what you do, and try to enjoy it as well as you go. It's not really about being flavor of the month. But you don't become an actor to be famous. I'm sorry, you don't. That's not. You become an actor because you want to act, and you want to develop your craft, because it's a very kind of personal career. I think one of my old tutors said something quite profound to me. He said the closest career to that there is to being an actor is a psychologist, because
Mm.
it's about understanding the human condition, and applying yourself. In You can't embody other people if you don't understand the psychology, or the hows and the whys and the wants, and
And I think that's lost on a lot of people. I think it's like you said, a lot of people think about fame and money and the lifestyle, and they get a bit lost
it's
in.
definitely about money. Like, you have to make a living, because you
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to do it unless you had pennies coming in. And that's
yeah,
another. If we're going to be just giving advice, that's another thing as well. Don't cut yourself short. You are worth your money. If people want to hire you, then they can pay for you, because you are worth it. If they want you, then you've got something to sell. You're selling yourself. So how much are you worth? The time. If you want to miss your kid walking for the first time, how much is that worth? How much will they need to
yeah.
pay you for that?
Yeah.
You know?
Is for you now at this stage, do you like to have multiple plates spinning at the one time career wise, or do you try and maybe dodge some of the other stuff and then just focus on, okay, this is my thing for right now. I'm going to put everything into this, and then
Mm-hmm.
worry about the next thing.
Yeah, well, I'm. You're always looking for the next thing, and you're always keeping in mind the people that have offered or mentioned things to you, because that's what you need to do to keep the work consistent. I've just managed to get a job recently over in Kuwait, and it's a live theatre performance over in Kuwait, which I can't really tell anyone anything about yet. But that's a play that's happening in December, so I've just landed that role. And I've got a movie which we're filming this year, which is the Pooniverse thing with Peter Pan. So for me, that's a few months of prep and a job, and then a few months of prep and a job, and they pay me well enough to last me for this year's worth of wages. So I am happy, and this year I'm kind of sorted. If the Angels wanted to send you a script and it was brilliant, and you'd have to make some tough decisions going, I really want to work with these guys and it's worth it, then that's a negotiation thing, isn't it? So.
And so to kind of move forward from that question, then, what does your daily routine look like, or your weekly routine? Like, do you have a set, like, okay, I need to get the kids sorted, then I need to come back and I need to sit down and like research, or I need to take notes, or I need to watch stuff, or I need to practice this, or I need to do that? Do you have like a set, or do you just take it as it comes?
I like to stay active, which is, I'll take the kids to school, I'll have a coffee, I'll sit in my car, I'll check the emails on my phone, I'll come home, I'll turn my PC on. If it's raining outside, I'll turn my PC on, and I'll look at some of the work that I've been creating, and I'll touch up and do a little bit of that. Or I'll go out into the garden. It's nice to get out and get fresh air. You've got to take breathers and relax and try not to stress and think too much. So in your downtime, when you're not preparing for a role, take advantage of doing those things, but then as an actor, you're constantly learning. Sir Ian McKellen said the whole world's a stage in one of his lectures, and it's true. You can go out, go to the local shops, go for a walk, meet people, look at what people are wearing, look at their shoes, look at the way they move and the way they talk, because it's building up ideas for characters, and look at their character. That's constantly learning. As an actor, that is constantly learning. Everyday life, that people would walk past hundreds of people in a street and not care because they're too bothered having a conversation on their phone. But you could learn so much by just witnessing everything that's going on around you.
You mentioned the Cauldron movie, the witch, loosely in that realm, and you had said that you're developing that alongside of other people, is it?
Yeah, so I know there's a gentleman called Lewis Sycamore who's a very talented singer and actor. So we actually have a small production company which we're developing that through them. We've also got some of the key people that were in a movie that we've just finished called Gallowmere, which is a dark fantasy feature film. I was fortunate to be one of the leads in that as well. So that'll be released probably later this year or next year. It's just in post-production. We're very excited for that. So the team have managed to hit this level of quality within the filmmaking, which has now allowed us to go for something quite extravagant and dark and fantasy, which is we're really excited for. So yeah, we're
when you say you're developing that project, is that something that you're helping write the script, storylines? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, scripts and characters. Yeah.
Okay. And is that something that you want to do more of, I guess, going forward? Is that something that excites you, being able to take the helm and actually make all these characters?
Well, I mean, yeah, I love making movies. I love being involved in making movies. That's why I do this. I love acting even more. But there's several different layers to it. As an actor, you read a script and you get your head inside a character, and you help develop that character. But you could also have fun developing a character in your head and applying it to a script. So I like writing about characters as well. I like creating characters. So from nothing. So it made sense for me to practice writing and creating scripts, because I get to see how on set a movie production will turn what's on paper into their final piece. So you can kind of deconstruct what happens and create a script yourself. You say, oh, I'm going to write this in my script because it now what I saw the other day makes sense. They'll be able to do that, and this will make sense to them. So it's all that experience comes together.
How long have you been, I guess, toying with that idea?
What, the idea of writing generally?
Yeah, like you said about practice and writing and stuff, because I feel like a lot of people maybe have ideas in their mind, and even if they never get made into anything,
write it down.
A lot of people are like, I want to write it down, but I'm like, I overanalyze how to write it down. I don't know how to write a script. I don't know how to.
One of the easiest things that I did when I first started is I got one of these, which is my lovely phone, and you open up the notes, and if you've got an idea, you do the automatic voice thing, and you just say what your idea is, and then you keep a note of it, and then later on, when it usually happens late at night when you're going to bed, right? You're going to sleep, and you're led there, and you're thinking, and you go, oh my god, that's a really good idea. Oh, I'll write it down in the morning. And then you forget what it was, or you don't do it, and you've missed that opportunity. So you just grab your phone, say what it is, and then in the morning you come to your PC and you go, yeah, this is actually a good idea. And then you can kind of spend 20, 30 minutes just analyzing it and then putting it into a little structure. And then suddenly you've got a paragraph of a description of a person that has a very weird kind of tawdry quirk which you absolutely adore, and then you can keep that in a file, and eventually you'll end up with a load of files full of ideas, and you're like, I can make a story from these. It's just every little bit helps, man. That's it.
Do you struggle with switching off that creative mind? I feel like the more, at least for me personally, and again at a completely different level, the more like-minded people I'm around, the more creative people I'm around, the more people who are just excited about life and about their craft, the more I find it starts to like get my cogs turning even faster. I'm like, yeah, actually, I could probably try that, or I could do this thing, or maybe let me reach out to that person who offered me that thing. And sometimes so much so that I could be sitting somewhere with people and I'm not even, I can't, or I lay in bed at night and I'm like, I don't really want to go to sleep right now because I can't switch off this thing.
Yeah, I have crash days. So I'll do that for like 2 weeks, and then suddenly I'm like, you know what? Tomorrow, I ain't gonna do nothing. I'm just gonna sit at home. I'm gonna go on my PlayStation 5. I'm gonna, I don't know, play Jedi Survivor or something all day. I'm just gonna chill. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna be bored for a day. I think that helps. But yeah, I get very active.
Yeah,
it annoys my partner sometimes.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by that, and I feel like people beat themselves up then when they try to do that. They try and have like a day where they do nothing, or they go see a movie and they go, I don't know, get McDonald's and just sit at home or watch Netflix. And then like you feel like, and I guess it's like you said earlier about, you pick up your phone, you look at social media, and everybody else seems to be doing the thing, and you're like, oh God, I shouldn't have not done the thing today.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, back in the early days, it was a real struggle. When the phone doesn't call, or you don't get emails, or you don't have the connections, and you're trying to make it as an actor and all this kind of stuff, and you just have days where you're like this. Like, what am I doing with myself? Like, there's nothing happening. How can I? So if you put in just 1 hour a day, even if you sat at home doing nothing, just 1 hour a day, do something creative, even if it's go outside and mow the bloody lawn or something. Just get out there in the fresh air, do something constructive, keep your mind active and think about different ideas. Stuff will always kind of come along.
I have two super quick questions to ask you before I let you go, but there's one thing I wanted to ask before I let you go, and it was that just what you touched on about the idea of sitting there and there's days go by where the phone wasn't ringing or there wasn't an email coming in. Do you think just your passion alone was what? Because I always get asked, ask this person, how did they persevere with the bad times or the down times, or okay, the bills are racking up and maybe the job is not coming in, or I haven't heard back, and maybe my wife or partner or husband or whoever is wondering, like, what's the story? Like, it's time to maybe.
Yeah, why didn't you wake up and get a real job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, do you think it's just solely because you couldn't see yourself living life any other way, or is there like I don't want to say like a trick, but something that you use to kind of help you, like, okay, well, look, it's been a bad week, it's been a bad month, but I have to keep going.
I think you've kind of answered the question, because it is perseverance. There's always going to be bumps in the road, and one of the worst ones is a financial one. There has been days a few years ago where I would go to drop my lad off at school and I couldn't afford the coffee. Like, my bank said no, and they're hard days. But perseverance, keep going. Something will always pop up. Something always pops up, but you've got to work hard, but also be consistent with that work. When I say work hard, you say, well, what do you mean work hard? I haven't got any work coming in. Well, no, you've got work that you can do to better yourself. So write, stay creative, because then when you wake up the next day, you feel like you've done something the day before, and then you go, right, well, what can I do today? And people will eventually start noticing after you go to events, or you go and meet other filmmakers, or you you get a job offer through a website to say, we're looking for people to come and help make this short film, and you go, yeah, okay, I'll come down and help, and you meet 5 people doing that, and then those 5 people are new contacts, and you can see what their other work they're doing, and they might recommend you to someone else, and it slowly builds and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. But perseverance, hard work, consistency, that's it. And don't give up. Don't give up, because if you give up, that's when you fail.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that a few times where it's like it's only you've only failed once you've actually decided to just pack it in and give up.
Yeah.
Final question then, and you can tailor this to whatever way you like. But I just feel like, at least from a lot of the stuff that's resonated with people, it always seems to be the darker characters that you've played, the scary ones, the horror-esque ones. And I guess the question I would ask then is, why horror, and what does it mean to you? Like, what do you think it is that draws you to those darker characters, or what do you think that makes you so good at being able to unlock, that character? Because I feel like, you can pull anyone into a role and it may not hit, it just doesn't resonate with the audience, they just don't believe it. But like, to go on 2 completely different characters, you've got Peter Pan, which, like I said, has just seemed to resonate across the board. And then you had something like The Witch, which is like a live stage performance, completely different style of acting performance, but they both resonated massively.
I love those kind of characters because they're different, and I love those kind of characters because you can play and create and experiment and work on things that you wouldn't naturally do: body movement, language, voice tone, the way they speak, and they're usually the more interesting. The horror characters are interesting. If you wanted to go into a character development element with those, they're more interesting to develop because of the psychological stuff. I always ask myself the question, why is this character being this way? Why are they doing it? Why are they doing this? And if you start pulling out those threads, you start getting something so interesting, and it's so cool to kind of generate that character. I would love to do drama. I would love to play a nice guy, I'd love to go into Jane Austen world and do those kind of roles as well. I would really like that. And in all honesty, the reasons why I've had these characters is because they were great opportunities. And that's why I decided to go for them.
It's going to be like a blessing and a curse for you probably now, because I feel like the horror community is going to try and take ownership of you as some of these like scary characters.
I'm going to be typecast now.
They're just going to drag you back. The audience are always going to want you back for those characters.
I know the writer of Saw 10 watched the film and loved it, and I had a voice note come through from the director basically saying he really rates you as an actor, and I was this little fanboy moment, but that was wonderful to hear.
That's great, Martin. Like I said, I'm conscious of time. I could talk to you probably all night about a myriad of things, but I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
That's all right, man. My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, and I hope we can maybe revisit maybe at the end of the year, once some other stuff has been announced and things have come out. And for everybody listening, whether you're looking at video or on any podcast platform, all the links to Martin's stuff will be down below in the description. Like I said, man, it's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best with Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare.
That's great, Aaron. Thank you, man.
And let's chat again in the future, man.
Yeah. Take care of yourself. Bye.
You too. Thank you.